All right, so I'm going to be delivering this octave mandolin later today, and before I deliver instruments or ship them out, I always put a fresh set of strings on them, stretch them out. So I'm going to show kind of a quick, easy way to do it that doesn't set you backwards with the bridge moving or the action. Assuming you already have strings on your instrument, I think the best thing to do is always kind of protect the surface, because I mean the end of the strings are like little daggers that can just like poke holes and things, and that's not great. So I just get a piece of paper towel, fold it in half, and then I will actually just kind of tuck it under the strings and underneath the tail piece right here, because when you're feeding the strings through, especially a tail piece like this, there's just a higher probability of kind of stabbing things. Other tail pieces, you're not going to have as much of an issue, but I still think it's good to just put like a paper towel or like a little square of cloth there to protect the surface. Do not just go and cut all the strings off and try to put the new strings on. It might seem obvious, or it's probably more obvious after you've made that mistake, which I have, of course, is then the bridge then moves, falls off. You got to find the new location, and that can be just a handful of extra tasks. If that is your situation, sometimes if you hold an instrument up to the light and change the angle, you can kind of see where the footprint of the bridge was. So you can use that as a rough starting point, and then from there you can tune it up, check the octave, and again, if it seems like you tune it up and it's sharp, then that means the bridge needs to go back a little bit. If the instrument is tuned up and it's flat, that means the bridge needs to move up a little bit towards the fingerboard. If you haven't moved the bridge at all and you're still noticing that, maybe it's because you've changed the gauge string you're using from light to medium and so forth. So just kind of be aware of any possible variables that might have changed. But if you're going from, let's say I have medium gauge strings on this right now, I'm gonna be putting the exact same type of medium gauge strings on it. Nothing's gonna need to be changed except the strings. So I am going to just do one string at a time. And I also feel like that's better for an instrument because it's less of a shock factor. Like if you were just to snip all the strings off, suddenly the amount of string tension this is under goes from a lot to zero like that. And I feel like it's just like this shock to the system. So do one string at a time. It'll make things, I think, a lot easier for yourself and for the instrument and the overall energy of the instrument. Have your strings out and I'll keep them organized. I kind of just lay them all out in front of me. I also keep handy a pair of wire cutters. I like to snip at the peg head. I'll snip them short as I go, because again, there's been too many times where I've been stabbed, like in the face or in the fingers, and it gets kind of old pretty quick. So I am going to, also I'll use this to help speed the process up. So rather than just like snipping it and be done, again, even though I'm only gonna do one string at a time, I will put some slack in it and then I will cut the string. Again, be careful if you're working over the actual instrument, you don't want to drop pliers on it. That would suck. That's happened before too. Disaster. So kind of like snip the strings kind of like over this area. There's a lot of dead space. The trash can. And then one little trick I do, so I have the string, I'll just kind of use my hand, I'll take the end of it and I'll just kind of like wrap it around my finger, and that just kind of puts a very slight kind of curve in it, so that when I'm feeding it through the tailpiece, I can kind of coerce it to feed itself up towards the sky and not just straight. So let's see if I can demonstrate without failing. And it's also good to also do that for the loop end too. I'll just kind of bend it over my finger like that, and that creates a nice little anchor point. Not all tail pieces will need that, but so as you can see how the paper towel is kind of protecting that, because if I'm feeding it through, it can just feed right into the arch of the instrument. Another trick you can do, so that's now in the loop, is I'm not gonna do it here, but you could have a piece of like Scotch tape and actually put the tape onto the where the loop ends hook in. Because I find when you're down at the other end of things and trying to like tighten the slack, sometimes things can push off and it'll become unlooped, and then you just keep winding and winding and winding, and then you're like, why is this taking so long? And you realize it's not even attached to this end. So a little piece of tape can help keep things anchored. Now what I do is I feed it down and through, and then I kind of fold back and go underneath the string, and then I pull it towards the headstock. And that, especially the strings that are not wound, it just helps add some friction. It's like Jenny the dog is here to help. All right, Jenny. And again, the bridge hasn't moved. Things are staying nice and tight. Alright, so that's a good initial bringing up to tension, and then what I'll do, I'll just take these snippers and I'll just do that, and then move them to the side, and I'll repeat that process for all the strings. So that's essentially how I go about a task like this, and once I'm done, then I'll remove the paper towel and be done with it. So that's about it. I'm going to change the rest of these strings.